It was time to go cruising again. We had spent 18 months in Townsville on a free mooring. Our route to shore, showers, and work was by dinghy, dodging the occasional magnetic island ferry. Both working at James Cook University to save money for more exploring. Sue in biological sciences, driving an electron microscope for marine researchers, and me in the computing side of the Three Bays multidisciplinary project, trying to make sense of disparate marine researchers' data, and the occasional, unofficial, expedition photographer. The mooring and CBD were close to Castle Hill. Named Hill because it was a few feet short of the 1,000 needed for being a mountain. But now it was time to head off and spend a month or so testing the boat systems along the North Queensland coast before heading off into the Pacific. Townsville to Whitsundays, usually done in 4 days against a 15+ knot headwind. Anchoring at major headlands, done often in the previous 18 months. Then this time into Airlie Beach to wait for Sue's parents, to take them on a cruise around the Whitsunday Islands. Airlie Beach was only small in those days, but was starting to take off. And becoming the mecca for a lot of home-built cruising boats. An old amphibious seaplane, converted to a cruising powerboat. With Sue's parents finally on board after an air hostess strike, we could head off. As conditions were light, we decided to motor upwind to Brampton, first to Shore Island, passing the lighthouse on Dent Island. Shore is undeveloped and protects Lindeman from the worst of the southeast trade wind swells. A short 22k hop down to Goldsmith. To anchor at Goldsmith, an old favourite. Then another small hop to Brampton, in the 70s possibly our favourite resort island. And a finishing point for yacht races from Townsville. We competed in one in 1975. We spent a couple of days exploring Brampton and enjoying its restaurants. The tidal channel between Brampton and Carlisle Islands. The airstrip along the edge of the channel. Unfortunately, after Cyclone Yasi in 2011, Brampton Resort was abandoned. And left to looters. With the southeast trades, we sailed back to Gap Beach on Lindeman, then trekked across to the resort for a meal, wandering along past the airstrip and airport terminal. Lindeman also suffered from Cyclone Yasi and has been derelict since. But supposedly a redevelopment is happening in 2026. Then on to Dent Island, to visit Bill and Lena Wallace and their coral arts business. In 1976, Hamilton Island was still an undeveloped wildlife park, until Keith Williams was allowed to buy it, and started development in 1978. In to anchor at Dent Island. We had to wait until the tourists from the Fairstar cruise liner had left before we could chat with Lena and Bill again. Australian Archives photo of Bill and Lena with some of their coral art. We moved down to Sid Harbour where the Fairstar was anchored. Little did we know that we would encounter the Fairstar again in 1977 in Fiji. Over the next week, we re-explored more of the Whitsundays. Then it was time to say goodbye and get serious about our travels. Into Airlie Beach to resupply and say goodbye to old friends. The only pub in town in 1976. A short afternoon sail to George Point. Tucking in behind the point. Next morning, it was into a fog bank to traverse the Gloucester Passage. The only fog I have ever seen in the tropics at sea. Then on to Cape Upstart for the night. A diversion out to Old Reef. Finding no clear entry into the Old Reef Lagoon, we continued into Stanley, to a sheltered anchorage, and threw over the fishing lines. A 10 pounds, 4.5 kilograms red emperor for dinner. We spent 2 days fishing until the fridge box filled. Also diving, including testing the hookah compressor at the north end of the reef. Then into Cape Cleveland and its lighthouse, passing by Cape Bowling Green. Anchoring at a little beach under the lighthouse. The Fresnel lens of the light was damaged by debris during Cyclone Althea in 1971. It still shows the chips in the glass elements. The light turning mechanism. Into Townsville to pick up Rowley and Robin. Then up to Palm Island. And into the delightful Northeast Bay and beach. Enjoying morning beverages. To the west side of Palm Island, where a World War II flying boat base was built. There were still the ruins of planes on the beach. One of the PBY Catalina wrecks on the beach. From October 1943, an average of 4 flying boats a day were repaired. Challenger Bay between all the islands, from Mount Lindsay. Around to a favourite anchorage at Orpheus Island. Anchoring in Pioneer Bay. JCU has a marine research station in Pioneer Bay, a current photo. Into Lucinda and the Hinchinbrook Channel. A lot of shoal areas so entrance is through shallow marked channels. Lucinda is a major sugar export harbour. At 5.76 kilometres long, the jetty is the longest in the southern hemisphere. So long, they had to account for the curvature of the earth when building it. The sugar conveyor belts and shiploader can handle quite large bulk carriers. We anchored overnight near Lucinda. Through the Hinchinbrook Channel to Cardwell. Looking across to rugged Hinchinbrook Island. Rowley and Robin left to return to Townsville. Cardwell to Gould Island. Looking across to sugar cane fires on the mainland. Gould to Dunk Island, a favourite destination for the yachties from Townsville in those days. A recent view of the Anchorage and inactive resort. The Dunk Resort was also damaged by Cyclone Yasi and closed. Only limited facilities for camping and day trippers from Mission Beach. Looking west to Mission Beach. And south to Badara and the Family Islands. Dunk to Marillion Harbour. Into Marillion Harbour for the night. To wait for the right tide to cross the bar into the Johnston River and Innisfail. Marillion is another sugar shipping harbour. The TSS Marillion in Marillion Harbour, 1916. Marillion to the Johnston River Bar and into the river. With less than a metre depth at low tide, we needed near the top of high tide. Over the bar and up the Johnston River. Sugar cane cutters were an important part of Innisfail's history. We visited historic Paranella Park to South Johnston by dinghy, then walking. Jose built the first hydroelectric generator in Queensland. Innisfail morning, with the southern flank of Mount Bartle Frere in the background. From Innisfail to Fitzroy Island near Cairns. The Fitzroy Lighthouse, with its red and green sectors guiding ships. Along the Grafton Passage, through the Barrier Reef. The locals were very friendly. Into Cairns to pick up David. Next, we explore north from Cairns as far as Lizard Island. Then we return to Cairns to leave for Papua New Guinea and the Pacific.